Hello there, welcome back to the channel. My name's Vince, I'm a composer, and welcome to the first in a new series that I'm starting that I'm calling Logic Workflow for Composers. In contrast to some of the music theory-based content I've been doing recently, this series is going to be all about little Logic workflow tips and tricks. Things that I wish somebody had told me when I was starting out using Apple's Logic, specifically to write music. In this video, I'll be talking about loading sample instruments on the fly, kind of getting from a sound that's in your head to a loaded up sample instrument that's ready to play and all set up how you want it. Some composers like working from a template, which is great. They'll have all of their sounds already preloaded. Unfortunately, for me personally, I've just never really got on with this way of working on a long-term basis. Most of the work that I do day to day, I find myself starting from scratch. But I do like working quickly, and I do like being able to access the sounds that I want quickly, even if I'm not deciding exactly what those sounds are going to be in advance. So that's hopefully what this video will help with. So here's the most basic way of loading a sample instrument that you're probably familiar with. You can click this button up here, create a software instrument. Then you've got to select this little thing here and maybe go through, find the one that you want. You know, maybe I want Kontakt, click there. Then, you know, maybe you have to scroll down, find the thing that you want, kind of dive through some more menus, double click this. Maybe you need to change the mapping on it somewhere, and on it goes. Now let me take you through the way that I'd load a sample instrument nowadays. So I'm going to hit Option Command S to create a new software instrument track. And you can see that it's already loaded some plugins here by default. I've set the default up to be an empty Kontakt instance, and we're going to come back to that later. But what I'm actually going to do is hit Y. That opens up the library, and I'm going to load up a solo violin. Say I just hear a solo violin in my head, so I want to sketch something out on that instrument. I'm just going to type SWVI, and that brings up some pre-saved channel strip settings that I've created. And by clicking on that, you can see it's loaded, and it's named the track for me. It's loaded the instrument with all of my mapping, how I want it, all of the settings, how I want them. It's also given me a gain plugin, which I like because I've mapped the gain control to a physical controller on my keyboard in front of me, which just is great because it gives me the ability to just quickly crank a volume up and down in quite a sort of broad brush kind of way. Also, it's given me a stock EQ, but again, I've got physical controllers in front of me so that I can just create a low cut or a high cut. I can do that without even opening the plugin window. So that's just a nice little quality of life feature there. And the whole thing took about 2 seconds. I happen to know that that's the patch that I wanted, you know, and so I can just quickly access it without interrupting the creative flow. Let me talk briefly about my naming conventions for these custom channel strip settings. So the STR refers to the family of instruments. So I've got STR for strings, BR for brass, and so on. And that's helpful mainly because if I export the track using the Command E export, which I often do when I'm creating stems for a mix engineer, it's going to automatically name the file that it exports using the track name. And that means that if I have multiple string instruments, all with STR, when the mix engineer drops those audio files into Pro Tools or whatever, if they're alphabetized, they're all going to be bunched up together, all of the string instruments. Then the next part, SW, refers to the sample library company, the developer. So SW I'm using for SWAM, because this is the SWAM violin. So you can see when I was searching here, I just had to type SW and then the name of the instrument. So similarly, if I type CSS, you know, then I've got a bunch of CSS patches here that I can quickly browse. Or if I type CSS cello, you know, then the articulations that I commonly access are listed there. Another thing that you can see on this particular channel strip setting that I've created is a grayed out plugin that I've set up some delay settings that I like, and then I've just hit bypass before saving the channel strip. And that just is a way of giving me very quick access to a common effects chain that I might like for a particular instrument. So this one that we're looking at right here is an example of a custom channel strip setting, which are accessible by clicking up here or in the library tab. And you can create those by using a keyboard shortcut that's assignable. I've got mine set to Control-Shift-X here, which is quite handy because you'll want to get into the habit of regularly saving custom channel strips as you go. At least that's been useful for me. There are also patches, which are slightly different. So patches, just like channel strip settings, you search in the library, and the main difference is that you can have track stacks. And you'll also need to use patches if you want to have drum instruments that you've saved with custom settings and things. Patches are also going to be useful if you want to load in multiple instruments at once. You can just nest those within a track stack, for example, a string quartet, have every instrument set up exactly how you want, mapped to various CCs how you want, and so on, and then you can just load all of that in straight away with all your custom settings. The way that you save patches is slightly different to channel strips. You actually just click on Save down here on the bottom right of the library panel. As far as I know, there isn't a keyboard shortcut that you can assign to that particular function. So that's the main thing that I wanted to present in this video. If you're not already taking advantage of custom channel strip settings and custom patches in Logic, it might be an idea to get going on that. I mean, all of this is optional, obviously. It's just about greasing the wheels a bit, and don't, let this whole video make you feel like you can't compose until you have the perfect, shortcut template-based system set up. In fact, with this whole process of getting custom patches together, custom presets, it's very easy to get a bit sort of stuck down a rabbit hole of just trying to create the perfect system and have every sound that you ever use at the click of a button. I would say just set up some patches initially and then just get used to the idea of always saving things kind of on the fly as you're working on something. Oh, that's a sound that I regularly use, or that's a series of clicks that I often do. I wonder if I can just quickly turn that into a patch or a channel strip setting and save myself some time on the next one. What if I have a particular sound in mind, but I haven't already set up a patch or a channel strip setting? Well, as you saw at the start, when I hit Command-Option-S to create a new software instrument track, it comes preloaded with an empty Kontakt instance. And this is just because I happen to have a lot of Kontakt libraries, so there's a good chance that the sound that I'm looking for is a Kontakt library. And if it is, great. I can, in the latest version of Kontakt, or actually I think this is Kontakt 6, there's a search bar, which is brilliant. So if I want Cinematic Studio Win, I can start typing like that. Here, when you click the plus symbol, there's the option to set default patch. And the way that you define that default patch is by setting up the channel strip how you like, saving it as a channel strip preset or a patch, and then clicking this button down here where it says define as default. What if it's not a Kontakt instrument? Well, I've actually created a bunch of channel strip presets with empty instances of various samplers. So for example, play. I've got an empty play instance here. Another option, if I haven't set up channel strip presets for these empty virtual instrument sort of shells, if you like, I can just menu dive, but I don't like menu diving. And so I want to tell you about a little plugin called Plug Search, which is an absolute game changer. It works for both audio effects and instrument plugins. And what it allows you to do is you just hover over the insert slot and you hit Control, and that brings up a spotlight style search bar, and you can just type in, say, sculpture and hit enter, and it'll just automatically find that in the menu. And it's great. It works for, effects, as I say. So if I hover over there, hit Control, type in Echo and hit enter, I can get Echo Boy loaded up like that. And it also has a favorites tab. So I use Valhalla Vintage Verb a lot, so I've got that saved as a favorite. And of course, you can also define the default state of the plugin. So I've got it set up to something that I know that I'm going to find useful, just as the default plugin state. Finally, I just wanted to give a little shout out to another way of batch loading tracks. For example, a load of string instruments, string orchestra. If you don't want to use the track stack method, or you haven't set that up, an alternate way you could do it is by using the project browser feature in Logic. So you just hit F, and that brings up this thing over here. And I've got a template here. It's just a Logic project file where I've just created loads of tracks and kind of organized them. And there are various ways that I sometimes like to do strings. So, this is a load of SWAM string instruments here, all set up a certain way. And I can just select all of those and click plugins, and then I can just add them to the project that way. I would use this method especially when I'm working on a series of tracks and I want to bring in a bunch of instruments from the last track that I worked on and just use that as a starting point. And they're usually already named for me, and I can just choose to select the plugins and not the content. And that just loads up all the instruments in one hit. And it might take a minute, so I can just go make a cup of tea or pick my nose or whatever. And and that's how I would handle that situation. Just before closing up, I wanted to give you a quick heads up about a bug that I've found relating to channel strip settings and Kontakt specifically. In some cases, when I save the channel strip setting, it seems to not recall the track name at the level of the mixer or the channel strip itself. Basically means if I click this, you'll see it's actually called Kontakt, and then it renames itself. And also, if I try to export it using Command E, it's going to print this kind of default Kontakt name instead of the str CSS that I want. What I found as a workaround is saving things as patches, but then I also have to turn this setting off here, project settings, audio, and then turn off these two checkboxes, and then it seems to work. So anyway, just a little heads up there for any fellow Kontakt users. Maybe if you're starting this process from scratch, I'd probably recommend going down the patch route and unchecking those two boxes might lead to the most predictable behavior. But I'm still trying to figure out the best solution because this doesn't seem to be consistent across all of my saved channel strip settings and things. I hope this was useful. A little bit of a dry video this week, I'm afraid. I'll try and make these videos to the point, although as you can tell, I do have a bit of a tendency to ramble. But anyway, thanks very much for watching. Let me know your experience in the comments, and I'll see you on the next video.